welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Codo, aka Codo Man. A couple of weeks ago, I reviewed Wonder Woman 1984, the sequel to 2017's Wonder Woman. I mentioned in my review that Wonder Woman 1984 was streamed onto HBO Max and in movie theaters at the same time, on December 25th. It's like two for the price of one, but at different locations for one film. Unfortunately, Wonder Woman 1984 isn't going to be the only Warner Brothers film on it that will be streamed on HBO Max and in theaters. There are 17 other Warner Brothers films that are going to be that are heading to HBO Max and movie theaters starting in 2021 of this year. Let me repeat that again. 17 films from Warner Brothers are going to be streamed onto HBO Max and in theaters at the same time. And with that announcement came out prior to Wonder Woman 1984 in December of 2020, which was December of last year. And yes, folks, I know we're all tired of 2020 being brought up again, but the events and pandemic that have affected that year won't be clear for our minds because we all experienced what happened in 2020, especially the impact of movies and movie theaters alone. So, I know, but anyway, yep, this announcement came back in 2020 with the whole HBO Max thing. And so anyway, back in 2020, Warner Brothers announced their plans to release 17 of their 2021 films to home release and on HBO Max. Well, actually, home release on HBO Max, and then being put into movie theaters. And when I meant by the films, I mean their biggest films like Tom and Jerry, The Suicide Squad by James Gunn, the upcoming Dune film, The Matrix 4 with Keanu Reeves, Godzilla vs. King Kong, Space Jam: A New Legacy with LeBron James, Mortal Kombat with James Wan. These are some of the biggest and anticipated films that are coming out this year, and they'll be streamed onto HBO Max and released in theaters that are open at the same time, basically on their release date. Now, I don't know when they'll be out, but I know they're coming out this year. So you guys are probably thinking, oh, okay, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. True, yeah, I know the pandemic is still around. Technically, you can watch it at home. True, that's definitely true. But what about the theaters? I mean, you get some theaters open, but I don't even know what theaters are open. The only theaters I probably know is the theaters overseas, and they're probably open. They're probably open too, which really begs the question on this whole HBO Max and the 2021 films for Warner Brothers. Is this a good idea? Was this a good idea for Warner Brothers to do this? Was this something that was planned before, or was it just a last-minute afterthought? Well, let me look into some of the films. For example, Dune, Tom and Jerry, The Suicide Squad, and Godzilla vs. King Kong all got teaser trailers back in late 2020 and a little early into 2021. And the hype for these trailers were so huge that people are excited to see those films in theaters once the theaters are open up. I mean, you got an all-star cast, the cinematic feel, the excitement, the tension, the music, everything you have missed and wanting to see in theaters again. And to be fair, I would be excited to see these films like Tom and Jerry, Dune, The Suicide Squad, and Godzilla vs. King Kong in theaters again, because I haven't been to a movie theater not since March. But somehow that took a turn with the decision that was made by Warner Brothers. So many of these films that I have thrown into the conversation are either low budget or high budget films. that will have a theatrical release in theaters and streaming services. Now, to be fair, having these big budget films from Warner Brothers being released in theaters and HBO Max is a risky move for many people who are moviegoers and movie lovers among many other people. So yeah, that's technically a big risky move. I mean, to be fair, it did happen in 2020. And if there's anything, other streaming services like Disney Plus, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, and other streaming services were kicking the competition back in 2020 with their films before HBO Max came to play. I mean, HBO Max was launched on May 27th, 2020, which was owned by AT&T through Warner Media and was built on the premium television service of HBO. So now there's a streaming service called HBO Max where you can stream all your favorite TV shows from HBO, including the movies that are also being played on HBO. Now this is a decision that was made for the Warner Brothers films that are coming out this year in 2021, like Tom and Jerry, Dune, the Suicide Squad. That decision was made by CEO of Warner Media, Jason Kilar, if I'm saying that correctly, which sent out a lot of shockwaves to the entertainment industry prior to Wonder Woman 1984 coming out. In fact, director Patty Jenkins of Wonder Woman 1984 spoke out about this decision that was made from the studio, saying, "No good option. If you had told me a year ago that we would ever go straight to streaming in a way, shape, or form, I would have flipped out." And I was quoting Patty Jenkins. Now, to be fair, Patty Jenkins was filming the Wonder Woman sequel back in 2019, so that was like almost about a year before 2020. And to be fair, I can understand what she is saying, because Wonder Woman 1984 being filmed back in 2019, a year before the pandemic that shut everything down. I mean, I could understand the hard work and effort to bring in a cinematic film that is made to be seen in theaters. I mean, and yes, there are some films that are either made for TV or made straight to DVD. But sometimes you really gotta think about the films that are being made for theaters. You gotta think about the directors. You gotta think about the cast, the crew, basically everything. And to which the option to have Wonder Woman 1984 being streamed on HBO Max for only a month is a no-option decision. Now, I was hype to see Wonder Woman 1984 in theaters, but after that announcement, to hear that it was streamed on HBO Max, it didn't bother me that much. I mean, true, yes, maybe I did see that coming, that some films will be streamed on the streaming services like HBO Max or Disney Plus. I mean, I kind of saw it. I mean, I guess you could say I did see it coming, but what about the theaters? Well, hey, even if you can't stream it from home, you can go check it out in theaters. But the big question is, will the theaters be open? That is the big question. Anyway, Patty Jenkins adds on, and I quote, "Like, I'm not for that plan in general. You know, I'm very pro theatrical release, and I will be that again as soon as this is over." And she is referring to the pandemic being over with, and that part I can agree, because the pandemic has literally put a huge dent on all the films in 2020, especially with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, Black Widow was supposed to come out in 2020. Now it's being pushed to 2021 of this year. And to add on, back in 2020, Wonder Woman wasn't the only DCEU film that came out. Birds of Prey also came out, but that film came out long before the pandemic hit. But yeah, she is pro theatrical, meaning like she is a director who wants to see films that are being released in theaters, and I can really understand that. In fact, some of the movie theaters, like, are basically gatherings. like gatherings with people and friends, family members. Something for humanity that's like something in life for humanity, like getting together with everybody to watch a movie, no matter how good or bad the film is. Now there will be a light at the end of the tunnel, and soon things will go back to normal. I mean, on the bright side, there will be a light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope everything gets back to normal pretty soon. Now, with Warner Media's decision to slide the 2021 slate of their 17 films like Tom and Jerry, Dune, The Suicide Squad, The Matrix 4, Space Jam, and all the other Warner Brothers films. Now I don't know the rest of the other films, but I can tell there are 17 others that I wish I could count down, but that would definitely take me a lot of time. But anyway, this decision, along with the theatrical release, has been met with shock as it blindsided both film co-financiers and talent. So yeah, this is probably the decision that was made by the studio that was not being told to all the other cast and crew members. I mean, critics includes theater chains already struggling to survive amid the pandemic, and that's true. All the movie theaters are struggling. I mean, there are definitely some theaters that are trying to like get back into the game, which is okay. That's a starting point, but they're still struggling because of how much the pandemic impacted the film. In fact, Patty Jenkins wasn't the only one that stood out about this decision. Christopher Nolan, the director, probably one of the greatest visionary directors of all time, stepped up into this game too. Like, he has some serious comments about this one, whose Tenet film, which was released in theaters only during the summer, despite the pandemic restrictions. Now with Tenet was delayed 3 times, and he was so passionate about this project, but the studio, Warner Brothers, kept pushing that film. Like, it feels like they're at the verge of having Tenet be released on HBO Max. Now, I don't know if that part was true, but it almost sounded like it. They wanted to put it on HBO Max, but no. Christopher Nolan stick to his gut and decided to release that film in theaters. Like here's the thing about Christopher Nolan. If you remember his films, which I'm pretty sure all of you probably have. If not, many of his films have that cinematic feel. This is the guy who directed the Dark Knight trilogy. This is the guy who directed Interstellar. This is the guy who directed Inception. This is the guy who directed Dunkirk. Now, this is the guy who directed Tenet, who literally wrote, directed, and produced and filmed some of the greatest films of all time. And many of these films were made for theaters. That is definitely saying something. He's a passionate director. In fact, Christopher Nolan quoted this out, and this is actually a jab at both Warner Brothers and HBO Max. Some of our industry's biggest filmmakers and most important movie stars went to bed the night before thinking they were working for the greatest movie studio and woke up to find out they were working for the worst streaming service. And that's the end of the quote. Whoa, Christopher Nolan, whoa. Let me repeat that again. And I quote, some of our industry's biggest filmmakers and most important movie stars went to bed the night before thinking they were working for the greatest movie studio and woke up to find out they were working for the worst streaming service, said Christopher Nolan. This is not just a jab at HBO Max, but that is a jab at the studio, Warner Brothers. And to be fair, I can definitely see what he is talking about. As I mentioned about his films, he does bring a good point, because if you think about many of Nolan's films, they have a cinematic feel to it and are made to be put into movie theaters. Now, to be fair, not all theaters made that are made for movie theaters won't be in theaters forever. I mean, they get put on DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming services. But here's the thing. When it comes to big cinematic films, you have big name directors, actors, filmmakers who are passionate about their projects that they're working on, and they are meant to be completed and released in theaters and make money out of it. And here's the objective about that thing. The money part is also a huge objective because many of these films make money. And with these 2021 Warner Brothers films that are coming out, they have worked. Most of them have already completed and they're ready to be released and ready to make money. But now they probably won't make that much money. They probably won't make that much money now because they're split into streaming services and theaters. And with Wonder Woman, as I mentioned with Wonder Woman, I don't think Wonder Woman's going to make back his budget. For Tenet, it actually did make back. It did make money. Tenet made money at the box office, but it wasn't enough to break even. It made back his budget, but it wasn't enough to break even due to the market because of the marketing. Now, Tenet came out last summer. It was delayed 3 times, and I haven't seen the film, but I can see why the film was more for a theatrical release. But it only had a limited seating for people because of the pandemic. And this was at the time where the pandemic did flatten out the curve a bit and try to release movies in theaters again, mainly overseas. The film was well received, but as I mentioned, it didn't make back. It wasn't able to make back to break even. Well, it made back for the budget, but not to break even. So how will this affect other films for Warner Brothers this year? Will they have that effect too? I don't know. For the most part, I'm definitely excited to see these films. I wouldn't mind seeing them on HBO Max, but I missed the movie theater experience too. I've been going to movie theaters for a while, and the last movie that I have seen in theaters was The Invisible Man. That was the last film that I have ever seen in movie theaters, and that was back in 2020. So that is definitely raises a lot of questions, and people are freaking out about this decision. I feel like this decision was made by the studio, and that was never brought up to any of the filmmakers, nor actors, nor cast or crew members. I feel like this was made quiet. This announcement they did was made quiet, didn't even bring up to any of the cast and crew members. So now I feel like they've been gutted a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know. This was definitely a decision made by the studio. And I don't know if this is going to be a good idea or a bad idea, but for the most part from them, it sounds like oh boy, it's going to be rough. It sounds like it's going to be rough. I feel bad for the filmmakers though. Filmmakers for these films. The films are going to come out in 2021 from Warner Brothers, because you got an amazing all-star cast. You got an all-star cast in Dune. You got Tom and Jerry having their next cinematic movie since their 1992 film of the same name. Once more. You also got the Suicide Squad movie by James Gunn, which really hyped me up because I'm a huge Guardians of the Galaxy fan, because that film was also directed by James Gunn, and it was also coming off the heels of the 2016 Suicide Squad movie, which did fail with critics, but it was actually a failed but fun movie. Plus, you also got the Mortal Kombat movie by James Wan, which I'm pretty sure everybody's probably going to be looking forward to it. Probably. Also, King Kong vs. Godzilla, which the trailer was released last week. Many people were so hyped, but they were hyped with the battle between King Kong and Godzilla. Man, that is going to be an epic battle right there. But the thing is, we may not see that. It's going to be split between HBO Max and in movie theaters. But the question is, how will this happen? Is this going to be a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Is it an okay idea? I say you guys can duke it out, decide. I mean, but the thing is, will they make money? Will it make back its money? Even if it's only streamed on HBO Max and video on demand or split in theaters? To me, it's hard to tell because there are some films that have not been released, yet. On top of that, the pandemic is still around, but I mean, it's starting to flatten out a bit. But I mean, you got vaccines arriving, the cases may go down, and the light will shine at the end of the tunnel. So there is still hope for the pandemic to flatten down. Like, yes, our lives will come back to normal. I know, and we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, there is a possibility we can see more movie theaters reopening sometime this year. But only time will tell. That's the main thing. So, I mean, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Did Warner Brothers make the right call? Do you think they're gonna stick with the whole movies being split onto HBO Max and split into movie theaters? I mean, like I said, you guys can make the call. I mean, I'm sort of in the middle, but maybe this might be a bad idea. I don't know. It could be a good idea. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, it sounded like it could be an issue. Basically for many people who either don't have streaming services or not. But only time will tell. I mean, there's probably a bit of both. Well, the question remains, will we ever see any Warner Brothers films from 2021 in movie theaters? I mean, well, probably yeah, even if it's split into movie theaters. But time will tell. Well, we'll see what's going to happen, I mean, we're already in February, but all we got to do is keep moving forward. That's the main thing. So anyway, thank you for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codo Man. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.